Hey, Laura.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. Glad to see you're on. We're just going to give it a few minutes to let everyone sign on. I'm glad to see that we're getting so many already. That's great. All
Hey.
right. I'm glad also that our connection is doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm stable.
Awesome.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Hey, Greg.
Awesome.
I
All
miss
right.
everybody who's logging on right now.
Yeah, this is wonderful. And just to let everyone know, you're more than welcome to ask questions at the end of Laura's artist talk. We'll open up the time for a live question Q&A session. So feel free to ask questions throughout the interview, and we'll do our best to answer it at the end.
Okay. You want to start?
Yeah, let's just do it. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Deering Estates Live Artist Talk. I'm your host, Ianelli. And with us today is Laura Marsh, who is a Deering Estate Artist in Residence alumni. Laura, a textile-based artist, is here to talk about her work and current exhibition, Entwined, which is based on her research of the historical medieval tapestries and textiles collected by Charles Deering throughout his lifetime. Laura, thank you again so much for joining us on this tour today and joining us for this virtual experience. Please tell us a little bit about the exhibit Entwined. Everyone, I'm going to take you around the room so that you can see all of Laura's wonderful work.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I missed the show already because it was up for about 2.5, 3 weeks. Someone just asked, like, when is it reopening? I don't think any of us know for sure when we will reopen. It's a difficult time, as we all know. We're in a stay-in-place order. What I really loved about this show is I make these sphere pieces, and I also make banners, and these are kind of rug banners that are on the wall. And with the spheres, you can actually sit on. For the opening, we had kids playing with them. They really can be just moved around the room, and they stay in place on top of embroidery hoops. So there's a way to keep them in place. Hey, Melissa. Melissa curated the show, and there's also a way to put them back in place. So one of the things Melissa and I worked out was, how can this be interactive but still look beautiful when there's no one in the room? And the spheres, I started a few years ago. I started working with these things. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, woo, sit on one. I love it when people do that. Most of my work is interactive. And I find that textiles, we all have a relationship to textiles. We wear clothes every day, obviously. We dry ourselves with towels. You know, we all have bed sheets in our home. So I've always loved the power of textiles to be very everyday and part of our everyday vernacular. So these balls, the yoga balls, are actually the armature for these pieces. And I made a pattern, and I kind of stuck with that pattern. I chose details from the ballroom. As you notice, there's the sun, which is the logo of the Deering Estate, and it goes back to Charles Deering's love of Spanish culture. And I added a few more waves in my version of it. So it's a little bit of an adaptation. And then there are these kind of paisley pattern on the side that is a detail from the iron door, that right there. Perfect, thank you. And so when you first walk into the ballroom, I wanted you to remember that pattern as you look at the balls. And then the balls are made of repurposed and recycled materials. And really, what I love about repurposing materials is that when a fabric store donated this material to me, it's called Boca Bargoons in Hollandale, a little bit up north from where we are now at the Deering Estate. It was upholstery fabric, and basically the company got a tax write-off for donating the materials to me. And the materials, like, there's stains on them, like particularly water stains or things like that. And when I was silk screening over them, I was thinking a lot about how can you juxtapose two patterns and even bring out the sections of the fabric that are faded or where there's a stain, and use that as another element rather than a mistake on the fabric or fabric that's gotten old. And I really believe in repurposing because I think, especially right now, in an economy that is going through a lot of strain right now, if we can all learn how to use what we have. I'm particularly inspired by face masks right now and how people are using things at home, like t-shirts, socks. I saw someone wearing a full snorkel recently. I think that sometimes during difficult times, we actually can become more resourceful out of need and necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit more about the tapestries that you created? Like in particular, the quotes that you chose.
Yeah. So these quotes are all based on Maya Angelou statements. So this one says, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated." I became really interested in Maya Angelou when I was a teenager, and I read Beloved for the first time. And I feel that her words transcend time and apply to a lot of different scenarios. And it also happened to be Black History Month when the show opened in late February. So it was like nice timing. This other one that you're walking toward, Delaney, is it talks about a wise woman wishes to be no one's enemy. A wise woman refuses to be anyone's victim. So this for me, like I think about how resilient women are and how often when we say no or we stand up for ourselves, we're mislabeled or, you know, words are used to describe us. And I think many strong women feel that, hey, if you're putting me in a position where I have to say no or to defend myself, I don't really, you know, want to be your enemy. But I'm certainly not going to be victimized by the things that you say. So that statement I just adore. I think it's such a statement that most women should know about. And this one, people will forget what you say, for me I think about the classic argument between a couple or a family. Like, why don't you remember what I say? And we get so obsessed with our own words, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And I think that's a good life motto. You know, if you attempt to make people feel comfortable, then they associate a good feeling with you. But if you attempt to make people feel uncomfortable, or you're very controversial, or you're trying to get a rise out of people, then people will associate that feeling of uncomfort with you. So I feel like these statements from Maya Angelou have transcended culture, and I feel that they also keep me thinking. So whenever I choose a quote for a tapestry, I hope that it doesn't give you just an answer, but it makes you think and go, well, yeah, I mean, why do I care so much about the specific words that I say? I should care more about how I project myself into a community and where I am placed within that context, and if people actually enjoy working with me or not. And go ahead, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, I said that's wonderful. I mean, that's really inspiring. One question I did want to ask is, what do you miss most about your residency here with us?
I really missed walking outside there.
It is a view.
Yeah, you can go out to the bay, and I think you know, the state has this kind of feeling of, you could tell that Charles Deering took in artists and gave them a retreat, and then everyone would convene for dinner. And I always had this communal sense of going there and walking outside, and with some artists kayak, you know, and just kind of take a moment to be in nature. I think the Deering Estate gives you that nice feeling of being at a retreat, making artwork, but always being aware of the environment and nature, you're immersed by nature. So I miss that really the most. And also just working in solitude. You know, I think a lot about artists, how we go back and forth between doing residencies, being alone in our studio, making work from home, and you know, when you're in a beautiful environment, you do feel inspired by just being there. And sometimes I would just be outside working on a tapestry.
Nice.
I love that.
That's really great. I mean, it really is a nice feeling once you come through the doors, and it's something I miss as I work more from home to keep safe. Why don't you tell us what actually inspired you to create Entwined?
Well, when I was there as a resident, I started working on the tapestries first, and I knew that there were some carpets and other rugs in the collection. And Melissa shared that with me, and I started thinking like, yeah, and also then going around the stone house, there's a lot of like monograms and also you can find the sun icon embroidered in a lot of towels and things like that. I really enjoyed walking around and finding just mottos to build into my work. So one of the first things I thought of was like, I want to adapt some of these symbols and just bring them directly into the work based on my association with being at the Deering Estate. And then I continued the work after I ended. So a lot of these tapestries were like midway in production, and I just continued working on them. I still screened a lot of the images at Ulite, which is where I work. Mm-hmm. Very happy to be working at the residency that I did right before the Deering Estate as their program director. So I worked in the print shop like after work on a lot of these things. And then I also sewed the balls in my studio at Mana Contemporary. Mm-hmm. And so it was really a nice project. I think I worked on this for about a year. And I just, worked on this large scale and worked in multiples. It was one of the first times that I took on the multiple as part of my work. So it was interesting to see how different iterations came to be, and some of them are more funky than others.
Right.
So
that's great. I want to open it up. I mean, we still have some time in case there's anyone that's on right now that would like to ask any questions to Laura about her wonderful exhibit that she has here. Now is the time to ask. While we wait for those questions to come in, I do have a few more that I was personally curious about. And that's that you mentioned the quotes and what they mean to you, but what inspired you to put the quotes on the tapestries themselves, like in these specific 3 quotes?
Mm-hmm. Well, I work with quotes a lot in my work, so right now I'm in front of my flags in my home studio. And the one behind me, I'll just spin around. It says, it's easier to be a self-starter than a self-finisher, nice. Which is also something that I think about during these times. Like, you can start a lot of things, but can you finish them? And for me, I work with quotes in all of my work, and for the longest time I was making installations. I would consider this show an installation at the Deering Estate as well. But for a while, I had a lot of questions in my work over the years about my relationship to craft, and if doing immersive installation was something that made sense. A couple of people asked me about the grand room and how do I incorporate stitching or machine work into my work. So these all go together. I work with sewing on a sewing machine, hand stitching, and I also plot out text on a vinyl cutter, and I use iron-on transfer vinyl. So those are the things that I use. And these things, like how am I inspired by them? I work between, I like to say, handiwork, like almost like a craft-based practice, and I also work into the digital world. So I like to bring sewing into contemporary practices. But choosing the quotes, I always choose quotes that are very open-ended, that make me feel inspired about my own life. They're always very personal to me. So when I was actually making this work at the Deering Estate, I was going through a really, really tough time in my life. It was a really horrible time. And I ended up getting a divorce during that time. And now I'm actually in a new relationship, and I'm pregnant, and I wanted to have a baby.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, I'll be having a baby in June, May or June, so very soon. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. And so the quotes by Maya Angelou they really made me feel like, okay, everybody encounters defeat. There's not a single person out there that hasn't been completely like wrought with turmoil. So how do you get through turmoil? Well, you can't focus on that turmoil. You have to focus on like the finish line, basically. Like, where do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
So that quote, particularly the one about defeat, you know, you'll encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated, for me was a way of just plowing forward. Like, okay. And actually this year on my list was, okay, I want to have a baby. I want to buy a house. I want to live with my partner who wants to raise a child. And I want gallery representation. And that's what I want. And I want a new job. And that was like 5 things. And I have the 5 things now.
Nice.
So,
good for you.
Thank you. So those quotes are all about like manifesting. It's really positive manifestation. How can you manifest what you want and look to other people like Maya Angelou,
mm-hmm.
and through a lot, who was an incredible anchor for culture. And how can you transmit that into the work? Okay. So, you know, and then the quote about people remember how you make them feel. I always want people to remember this work as though it made them feel comfortable and excited. Mm-hmm. Look around and you see lots of color and you feel like you're allowed to see something. And if you feel like you can contemplate the ballroom for a while, that to me is successful.
That's awesome.
So,
we do have few questions. I just want to make sure we get to. I'm sorry, Laura. We're the Tapestry collection today. So most of the tapestries were actually donated to the Art Institute of Chicago while Charles was transporting everything from Sigis to the estate. So a lot of it, we do have some here throughout the Stonehouse, but a lot of it was already donated to the Art Institute of Chicago. And then Sophie Guerra asked, have authors inspired other works of yours? What authors or artists tend to continually inspire you? That's a good question.
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, authors, advocates, and like political figures. It's kind of broad, but Maya Angelou is like probably one of the main authors. I've used Gloria Steinem in a lot of my quotes, and she's like a feminist lobbyist advocate, you know. I've used like Cesar Chavez because he talks a lot about labor. So, and a lot of the topics that I try to cover are like feminism, social reflection, and then sometimes I quote Emerson, you know. So it's pretty broad. It's really a lot of cultural figures that I feel like have transcended time and who quote keep me thinking and keep me asking questions. So that's really the criteria. But yeah, a lot of the sort of more reflective things that I read or hear about. And right now I'm trying to figure out how to talk about isolation and the quarantine that we're living in, and a new set of flags for the Directed Art Modern, which is a local gallery here that I'm starting to work with. So we're doing a show online about isolation. So I'm thinking,
nice.
You know, who has written about isolation and what types of isolation, because there's different types of, you know, there's like physical isolation, there's emotional isolation, and I think everybody's experiencing like both physical separation and even like, you know, minor depression from not seeing people like in a real way. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. And actually that leads me to my one of my questions, is how is our current events, you know, affecting you in a positive or negative way as an artist? You know, being restricted to just your home, especially now that you're pregnant. I'm sure even more so you're having to be extra careful. So how is that affecting you currently?
It's affecting me. I'm making 11 face masks for a friend who's been paying me. I'm also working on this group show that's about how artists are dealing with isolation. I think initially it was a shock to be at home and to be working off of platforms like Zoom to connect with my my staff. And then I think the hardest part for an artist community is that you're used to going to events and connecting with people. So it's been a big slowdown. I go back and forth between really missing people and also feeling like my isolation might be even longer.
Mm-hmm.
Because once the baby comes, I'll be in
Right.
maternity leave.
Right.
So I'm like, wow, for me, this might be like a 3 or 4 month process.
Yeah.
I'm really gonna miss people.
I know. I know. We could all understand that it is a difficult time. And one thing I almost forgot to mention is the catalog that you have. Do you have it by any chance with you?
I do have it. I had it on the
Okay.
phone. I'm gonna show it. So yeah, it's probably backwards. So what I'll do is I'll just flip through it now. So yeah, this catalog I'm really happy with. All the photos were taken by a photographer in Bakehouse called Pedro Wasson. Really great guy. He and his wife, this is actually by Dennis Scholl, my director, who is a filmmaker and photographer. He took a really great shot of the reflection of the Deering estate on the work.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Jill Weisberg designed it. And
Oh, that's gorgeous.
so yeah, I love the spreads. And I included an artist statement and also Melissa's press release.
Mm-hmm.
So it turned out better than I even expected.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I love it. It's a nice little piece. And then the Deering estate will have it, and I'll have it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Melissa Diaz's essay. And then there's close-ups of the tapestries.
That's beautiful.
A couple people are saying it's unfortunate they can't see it in person. I know.
I know. Hopefully soon. Hopefully, as long as everyone, follows the guidelines, we'll be able to open up in the near future. But we all have to practice our safe distancing, and that's why the positive side to social media and the internet is us being able to at least provide this virtual experience to our guests. So they could still see it, still enjoy, and still hear from you, Laura. So again, I thank you so much for joining us today, answering our questions, and taking us through the exhibit. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, and Melissa wanted to mention that when you guys do reopen, you'll have the catalog, so you can always take a look in the catalog. You can always contact me or DM me.
Perfect.
I'm in the community. It's lauramarsh.net is my website. So thank you all, you guys.
Thank
miss
you.
you all.
Yes. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them to the Deering Estate or to Laura. I believe her account is Laura__Marsh for her Instagram as well. So you're more than welcome to ask us any follow-up questions. We have images, so we're happy to continue sharing the images of the exhibit as we can. Again, thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And until next time, everyone have a great day. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.